This video is published by MBKP International. This video we're going to talk about the paper push binding on electric paper cutters. This example here is a Guillotine EC19 Pro, but this video would also work for the Guillotine EC19M, the EC19, the EC17. So first thing, I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to hit the proofread, and this paper, you can come on around here, and this paper push is going to, you got your paper push right here, and it's going to move back when I hit the proofread. And it's going to, I set this up to where it will bind. Okay, it'll start making a grinding noise and stop. I'm going to hit the off button when that happens. See, this is going to be something if yours is doing something similar to that. First thing you want to look for back here is around back here. You're going to look and you got these side rails here. Just make sure this is not hitting it. Hitting this, make sure there's a nice gap there. Same thing on the other side. You want to look at this pointer here. Make sure it's not digging into anything. Make sure there is a gap all the way down. Then, like even on the edge here, like that side there could be hitting on the edge, or this top part could be hitting on this here. So make sure none of that's touching. Another thing, you want to look down and on the sides of this here, the sides of the metal. You'll see this metal bar is right about there, and it could be touching it, grinding on the sides of this. And the same thing with the other side. Make sure it's not digging into the side of this and causing it to grind. So make sure there's a nice gap there and a nice gap there. In this case, I adjusted these screws to where I move these screws down, or this bar down, which is connected to this. And as you can see, it's getting really tight right here. And basically, the bottom of this is binding on the top of this thing here. It's getting it real snug. So basically you want to look at all those things, those two sides, the pointer, and this gap here to make sure nothing's hitting. Make sure it's not grinding on anything. Okay. In this case, it's grinding towards the back. So here's the adjustment for the back. All I got to do is take a 10mm wrench on this here. This would be for the EC19 Pro and the EC19M. On the EC17 and the EC19, there'll probably be Phillips screws on here to loosen. Same thing, it'll just be Phillips screws. I'll loosen these. And when I loosened it, that kind of popped up a little bit. And now you can see a little bit more of a gap. Now I'm going to turn it on, and it should move back to the back fine now. You can stay back there, and I'll turn this on here. It was basically binding with the top of this. You know, the bottom of that was starting to rub on the top of this because I adjusted it that way for it to do that. When we send it all the way to the back, you want to send it to the back when you do this adjustment. Basically all the way to the back as far as it'll go. Once you loosen these two screws, send this all the way to the back, and hopefully it won't be making your grinding noise anymore, or binding, whatever. And then you just snug these, and you just tighten these back down, because when this moves back, it will lift it up and keep it from binding on that. If it doesn't, you can always like sometimes they're a little stiff. You want to make sure you loosen them 3 or 4 turns. You could always tap up on the bottom of it with a hammer on these nuts. You know, just tap them a little bit to get this to pop up, which would raise this, which would keep it from binding against that if you need to. Now, when you're done, you do want it to be a nice. You don't tap up on it unless you have to. Typically, you just loosen it and you let this come back, and it will raise the amount it needs to raise, because you do want about a gap of about a 1/16 of an inch between this and these top things. The only thing it should be touching is, you'll see these plastic tabs in front. Right there, those are the only things should be touching this to keep the paper from going underneath it. So once you move it all the way to the back, you just snug these back down, tighten them back down. Okay, and that should take care of it. If it doesn't, then you need to look for another place. Like, make sure it's not rubbing anywhere. Like I told you, like on these sides, make sure it's not rubbing against this or that. If it's doing it on the front, you want to. It's the same process. It's just this whole entire plate here, and there's 4 bolts here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 big ones on the outside. You loosen them, and this whole plate will kind of could move up and down. But just loosen them good, 3 or 4 turns each, and then move the paper push all the way to the front. If it was binding towards the front somewhere, and then once you got it out the front, all the way at the front, then you tighten them down. Just same thing as we did in the back. It's just reversed. You move the paper push to the front and tighten them down after you get it to the front. Okay. Something else you want to look at if you've had your paper cutter for a while, you could remove this back table here, and there's just 2 bolts in the back that hold them usually. And you look at your screw rod here, and you may want to grease it. This one is a new machine, it hasn't been greased yet, but we'll be greasing it later. But you can grease this, and you can put a real thin coat on this with your fingers of grease just on this bar to make sure. If you've had it for a while, you know, and you've never greased it before, like you've had it for a couple of years, it could be binding because it's just getting, it doesn't have any grease here, it's not lubricated very well. So you want to check that, and when you got it off, you might want to check this sensor here. This magnet sensor here, and there's a sensor, make sure that's not hitting anything. You can move it back, make sure this thing doesn't run into and hit this sensor or something like that, causing it to bind against that. So there is a sensor right here, and then the magnet, so make sure those aren't hitting each other when it goes back, because that could cause it to bind. Okay, and then let's see, again, greasing these could be an issue. That's pretty much it back here. I'll put this back in place. And then one other thing up front I'm going to show you. If it still doesn't work, you might want to check this box here, because it's your driver box that controls your paper push. It doesn't always, but there's actually a green light back here. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if you can see the green light on. Okay, when this is on, be careful about going in here. I'm in here, I do it a lot, but when the power's on, you do need to have the power on to see if that green light's on, but don't be putting your hands in here, just check it, because you can get shocked in here. But green light's on means it's good. There is a red light right next to it. If that red light's on, you definitely need to replace this driver box. Very simple to do. But there is a chance your driver box could still be bad, even if the red light's not on. So you could possibly need to replace this driver box. And then the other thing possible is this main board here. This main board right here could possibly need to be changed if none of those adjustments we did fixes your binding problem. Okay, and that's pretty much it. You got your adjustment in the front, adjustment in the back. You can grease it. You can make sure it's not hitting anything like on the sides like I showed you. And if none of that still fixes your problem, you're going to have this driver box a possibility, and you're going to have the main board a possibility that needs to be replaced. The main board in the EC17, EC19 is a little bit different than this. It's a longer board. It's about a rectangular shaped board, but it's something similar. This would be very similar on the driver box, but this is the EC19 Pro, and the EC19M would look like this in here. And that's basically it. This video was property of mbkpinternational.com.